So, hey, we're kicking off a brand new series, Faithful, and we're looking at Hebrews chapter 11. And if you've read Hebrews chapter 11, it's often called the Hall of Faith, kind of a play on the words of Hall of Fame. And there's a series of stories or mentions people's lives, how they lived by faith and honored God and accomplished something awesome. So we're going to be looking at those in this series. But there's something about the human spirit that is inspired by someone else's amazing story. You look at someone's life and they accomplish something great, and then you feel all of a sudden inspired to go do something. I think that's in all of us. And so I decided, hey, I'm gonna look and see how many other Hall of Fames there are out there. Are there different kinds? So I found some. I thought I'd share them with you. Did you know that there is a bobblehead Hall of Fame? Did you know that? There's a bobblehead Hall of Fame? You pull it up on the screen right there, and then go through a couple of pictures there. How many have a bobblehead at home? You got a bobblehead? Yeah, I don't know where that caught on, like who thought of that idea, but there's that. Did you know there's also a potato Hall of Fame? Can you guess what state it's in? Idaho. I just realized it's on the screen. I was wondering, it was like the last two services, I was like, wow, they're really good. I mean, Idaho, everybody said Idaho, but the answer's on the screen, whatever. Did you know that there's a criminals Hall of Fame? So if you commit enough crimes, you could be in this one. It's in Canada. And then there was also a clown Hall of Fame. I saw some of the pictures. They scared me, so I thought I wouldn't show them to you. But there is a clown Hall of Fame as well. But some better ones that I found out there. Did you know that there is a barbecue Hall of Fame? And can you guess where it's located? In Kansas City, Missouri. Yeah, that's right. Now, I got a little survey I want to do here. I've been curious, each one of the services. So between Jack Stack and Q39, which one's your favorite? Jack Stack or Q39? Okay, so we're gonna vote. You can only vote once. All right? Who says Jack Stack? Hey, there's a lot in this. Okay, who says Q39? Oh, still about half and half. Wow. So first service it was half and half. Second service said Q39. And then you guys are about half and half, so interesting there. All right, did you know there's also a National Baseball Hall of Fame? You probably did, located in New York. There's also a Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Yeah, let's go. I got a cheer on that one. So maybe you've been out there. Some of them, you can see Joe Montana there. Let me list off some names. You might recognize these names. Cheer for them if you like them. Marcus Allen, Lynn Dawson, Tony Gonzalez, Joe Montana, Will Shields, Derek Thomas. Let's go. There's going to be some more names in there coming up from the Kansas City Chiefs for sure. So as we start this series, like I mentioned before, we're looking at Hebrews chapter 11 for our inspiration. And it's filled with men and women who have a lot of things not in common, actually. Some were rich, some were poor. They had different personalities. They were born at different times. They faced different scenarios and situations and challenges, but they all had this one thing in common. They all trusted God. So as we look at Hebrews chapter 11, we're gonna go start in verse 1. And it's kind of nice because it starts out with a definition of what trust is or what faith is, what faith in God is, okay? It starts with definition. So if you have your Bibles, turn there. In Hebrews chapter 11, we're gonna start in verse 1. It says this: now faith is confidence. Everybody say confidence. In what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. So that word confidence in the Greek is hypostasis. And it's like a legal term. It's a legal term that would be used for like a deed or title. And so like a title for your car, a deed for your house, showing that you own that thing. So I thought I would bring in a little show and tell here. I brought in a title to my hot rod car. Yeah, my Toyota Prius. Yep, right here. Kind of nice. So this shows that I own it, okay? This shows that I own it, and a little bit of the bank, actually, still. So this shows that I own this. Now, if someone were to come up to me and say, I don't believe you own that Toyota Prius, I would say, no, I got the evidence right here. I do own it. Now, do we see right now my Toyota Prius? No, you don't see it. I don't see it, but I got proof right here that I own that thing. What the writer of Hebrews is saying is that your faith is like the title. It proves that you own it. So you might have an inner voice sometimes, or the world, or a critic, or somebody say against the promises of God, like, oh, you believe in that God thing, or is God gonna provide for you? Is he gonna help you? All you have to do is say, you know what? God has already given it to me. He's promised me this. You know, I might not see it yet, but I know it's coming. All I have to go to is the title. I know that God is helping me. That's what faith is. That's what the writer of Hebrews says. This is the evidence. Even if you don't see it with your own eyes, you've got it right here. This is the faith. This is what we turn to whenever we doubt, we're challenged, inner critic, all that stuff. We turn to our faith and we say, I know it to be true because the title says that I got it, I own it, no matter what anyone else might say. So then it says in verse 2, okay, after that definition, it says, this is what the ancients were commended for. So again, we're gonna look at these stories, different stories of men and women who trusted God. They were rewarded by God. We'll look at their story and we can encourage our journey and our faith journey with God. And so today, we're gonna look at a guy by the name of Noah. Noah. All right, turn to your neighbor right now and say, Noah. Noah, he's a great guy. Okay, and there's only one verse in the Hebrews 11 about Noah, but we're gonna actually look back at Genesis for some of the story as well. But Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7 talks about Noah. This is what it says. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became the heir of righteousness that is in keeping with faith. Now, when you think about the story of Noah and the ark and the animals, you might think back to when you were a kid and you would see images of Noah's ark and all the animals and just, you know, how Noah was just so happy, and you got the ark and you got giraffes and stuff with their heads up and they're just like waving, and then, you know, elephants and all that kind of stuff. You think about that nice little story. In fact, you might have seen a picture kind of like this one right here, right? Like that. Look at that. So, a true story, I was looking for a picture for this to show you guys, and I was like, you know what? This is exactly what you probably see as a kid, but I was like, all the animals, that makes sense, except for the things in the water there on the left, like those aren't real, but I guess I'll just show it anyway. So then the first service started yelling at me saying, no, that's a narwhal, Sorry, I'm not gonna say anymore. I'm gonna hurt myself, bite my tongue or something. So I didn't think it was real because all I know about them is they're in the movie Elf, where Buddy was walking away and he says, I hope you find your dad. You guys remember that? Like, I thought it was just not a real thing. And then I asked him, I was like, so can you find him in a zoo? No, exactly. They don't even believe they're real. I'm just saying. Are they real? I don't believe it. All right, so this is oftentimes what you think about from when you were a kid, when you hear about Noah and the ark. But honestly, it's a pretty tragic story. It's pretty crazy. Noah likely was not just smiling and happy with all the animals and stuff. Like, it was a mess. It was judgment on the world for the wickedness that they were committing. God was gonna wipe out the whole thing. So it's pretty crazy, crazy time. Now, we know that was not a complete judgment on the world because we know that cats made it on the ark. And so, was not a full judgment, but there you go. All right, let's read about it in Genesis chapter 6, starting in verse 5. It says this, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart were only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created. With them, the animals, the birds, the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. So I know there's some language in there about, like, you know, regret or whatever. Like, how can God really regret? You know, doesn't he know the beginning from the end? And yes, absolutely he does. But you have to remember that this is the writer of Genesis that is trying to describe to humans, us, what God is like. So other times in the Bible, you see like the writer describe it as the arm of the Lord protected the people of God. And the arm of the Lord stretched out. Well, God doesn't have like an arm that stretches out, not a literal one, but it's just put into a phrase like when you're driving down the road and you hit your brakes and you put your arm in front of your child to protect them. It's the same kind of idea he's trying to describe. So it's not that God literally is feeling these emotions, but in the same way they are in human terms, like we would feel grief and regret, like, oh man, like this is not a good situation. And really, God has to do this because to let it to continue would be a greater injustice. To turn a blind eye to what was happening on the earth, such violence and injustice, to let it continue and to let the human race continue to multiply would only have made it worse and worse and worse. He said, no, we gotta put a stop to this. But in the middle of that, look what it says in verse 8. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. So the backdrop is this evil world, all kinds of wickedness, and yet in the middle of that you have Noah who's living for God, walking with God, serving God, paying attention to God. And then this is what happens. Verse 11, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on the earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. And then it goes on in those verses that we won't read, but you can read it later, of the description of the ark, like the exact dimensions and stuff. So I want to show you some pictures. Maybe you've seen some of these, but this is, if you had it on a football field, this is how big the ark would be in comparison to a football field. Several different items here. So the arch in St. Louis or the Statue of Liberty, you can kind of see it on its end, how tall it would be, Washington Monument. There is a rendering of, this is an actual one that's in Kentucky to where you can go and visit it, but they built a life-size scale of this. Here's it actually, the other one was just a drawing, like an architect render, but this is actually it. So you can see real people there walking in front of it, just how big this thing is. This thing's like huge and massive. So then verse 22 goes through all the instructions, and then this is what it says. Noah did everything just as God commanded him to do. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at Noah's faith, different aspects of his faith, and I believe just as it encouraged him on his journey, it's gonna encourage us on our journey, okay? 3 aspects of his faith. Point number 1 is the length of his faith, the length of his faith. Second one is the strength of his faith. And the last one is the impact of his faith, the impact of his faith. All right, so if you're ready, I want you to turn to your neighbor right now and say, buckle up, Buttercup. Go on, turn to him, buckle up, Buttercup. All right, the first one, the length of his faith, the length of his faith. I just want to talk to the guys for just a second. How many guys in here, you like doing a nice house project? You love a good house project? Yeah. Getting after it, rip up those floors. Yeah, tear down a wall or two. Yeah, I like that. I like a good project. I've accumulated a lot of tools from Harbor Freight. Let's go. Nice cheap tools. All right, so I like doing a project, and I was walking with my wife the other day, and I was telling her, I was like, man, I want to do this project. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to get after it and do this project. And the first thing she says to me is, hey, are you going to do it right? I'm like, oh, okay, shots fired. When have I done it? Well, I mean, there's a few projects I've left undone and that I've done, not a great job on. I think of one. Now, this was a legitimate one. Our old house, our hall bath, I had this idea. I'm gonna retile it. I saw pictures on like Pinterest and stuff. I was like, oh, this is gonna look so good. This is gonna look so good. So I chose really small tile, and I was gonna put it all, going all the way up to the ceiling. It was gonna be so cool. And so I got excited. I got all the tile, I got everything, and I put in a couple rows, and I was like, this is a lot of work. So I stopped. And I said, I'm gonna get after this tomorrow. And I didn't get it after it tomorrow. And I did about a row of tile every other month. It was kind of my pace. And we had a small group come over, and they were noticing the tile undone in there, and they were kind of giving me a hard time about it. And eventually, after 2 years, Someone offered to help and help me finish the tile. Yes, thank you. Where was that clap coming from? Thank you. Somebody appreciate it. Talk to my wife. Talk to her. Tell her how much you appreciate that 2-year project. It's a lot of work. But you think about what Noah had was a massive project. He had something on such a grand scale. And if you look at it, it doesn't say the exact timeline, but you can kind of figure out the timeline because you know when Noah's sons were born and and then you know when the flood started. So the time that God spoke to Noah to start building the ark and the time the floodwaters had started, when it started raining, was about 100 years, between 75 and 100 years. That was a long time. That is a really long time for Noah to be working on this project. It says that he put pitch on the outside and inside of the ark. Like he painted, the tar stuff to keep it waterproof. Like I don't like even painting one wall. How many are like, you like painting? It's like therapeutic. Man, I'll pray for you guys. I'll pray for you. No, I actually admire you because we need more people like you. So he did that and he got up every morning, every day, every week, every month, year after year, decade after decade. He was faithful to work on this project. Can I tell you, and this is a word for me too, but this I believe is a word for our generation, about sticking with it and not giving up on something, to be faithful. Maybe for you, you're like, man, I've been at this job so long. It's been 3 months, 3 months of enduring this job. You need to read a little bit about Noah. He got up for longer than you're likely gonna live at one job, one project every single day because God told him to do it. He was faithful. He had long faith. He had long faith. So how did he do it? Like, how was he able to keep after it? Well, the writer of Hebrews says this. What motivated him? In holy fear, built an ark. In holy fear, he built an ark. In other words, he wasn't letting his emotions get in the driver's seat, determine what he would do that day. No, he had a holy conviction saying, God told me to do this. So I'm not gonna let my feelings of not wanting to, or frustration, or fear, or anger get in the way. I'm gonna tell those things, no, you don't get to decide what I do with my life. God decides what I do with my life, and I'm sticking with that. And Noah every day got up and he built the ark. We have to make sure, said another way, it said like this: don't let short-term feelings sabotage your long-term faith. Don't let some feeling that comes into your life. Young people, this is so important because the decisions you make when you're younger determine a lot of your life. And eventually, all those decisions accumulate. They start accumulating and you start reaping what those decisions are. Man, can I just encourage you? Don't live by your feelings. Don't live by your feelings. Don't let them get in the driver's seat. Kids belong in the back in a car seat. Okay, your feelings belong in the back in a car seat. They can say what they think every once in a while, but they don't get to drive. They don't get to drive. I bet for Noah, he had feelings. Let's just speculate here for a second, but I'm sure after 30 years of working on the ark, he might have been like, God, like, why you got me doing this? Like, here I am every day getting up, building a boat. Like, what? I don't understand. I'm sure he had some frustration after a while, but you know what he decided to do? He didn't let those feelings take root. You know what? It's okay to have the feeling. We're all human, right? It's okay to have the feeling. The key is what we do with the feeling. Not to let it take root in our life, not to let it crawl into the driver's seat, not to let it determine our destiny, because our feelings will determine a destiny, but that's not a destiny that any of us want. We want our faith, this conviction, this holy fear of God saying, God, you called me to do this. I'm gonna stay faithful to that thing day in and day out. That's what real faith looks like. I love what Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 says. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. That was true of Noah, and that can be true of us. 1 Corinthians 15 says this: therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Noah kept going. He persevered. He kept with it. All right, point number 2 says this: the strength of his faith. The strength of his faith. Noah had strong faith because he trusted God because he was building a boat in the middle of like land. Like not just a little, it'd be one thing if he was building a canoe, he had a river nearby. I mean, all the neighbors would be like, nice canoe. You gonna go fishing? But instead, he was building a massive cruise liner. And then when his neighbors would ask him about like, hey man, that's a pretty big boat. You don't have that big of a family. Like, what are you? Yeah, I got orders. I'm gonna put all the animals on it later. When it starts raining. But it's never rained. But what's rain? Like they would have been completely like, what are you doing? Eventually, I'm sure they were laughing at him, making fun of him. I know for me, if I was Noah, I'd be kind of like, wait, especially with the animals. I mean, think about the animals. Now, the Bible does say that God brought the animals to him, but does it say like any more detail about, well, all of a sudden he brought it to him? I mean, imagine it probably happened over time. Like God kept on bringing the animals. So Noah also had to be kind of like a farmer dude that had to build fences and stuff like that. My question would be, like, I would be worried. I'd have questions for God. If, let's say I put myself in Noah's shoes. I have questions for God. Like, God, how am I gonna know if I got a boy and girl? The narwhal thing, I'm not even pronouncing that right probably. I don't even know. Like a turtle, I couldn't tell you if it was a boy or a girl. I didn't even know where to look. Like, what do you do? And then I would be like, how do you feed these things? Like, what if they want to eat me? Like, I don't want to bring them on the ark. Like, I would have all of these questions about the animals. And honestly, if God asked me to build an ark, I'd say, God, you want me to tithe, twice, double tithe? I'd rather do that. God, you want me to pray more? I'll do that. You want me to read the Bible more? I can do that. Lord, I will even serve in the kids area, okay? I will do anything. Don't ask me to build an ark. We can put all the animals on it. Do you see that this is different than length of faith? This is strength of faith. This required, in the midst of great opposition, he had to have strong faith. It'd be like this. Well, equivalent of what Noah was doing would be something like this. Let's say there was somebody today that said, hey, God told me that there's gonna be an asteroid that's gonna come destroy the earth. And so he told me to build a dome. And he built it in the middle of Iowa. And he said, build it this thick, with steel. I mean, can you just imagine? We would probably all drive by and point and laugh. Be like, look what this dude's doing. Like, this is crazy. Now, obviously, that's just a fictitious story. We know the beginning from the end in the Bible and all that stuff. But you could sense, just for a moment, we get into the shoes in Noah's day of somebody else that's looking at what Noah's doing and be like, bro, what are you doing? You're crazy. I wonder even if his own family thought he was kind of crazy. Like, man, I gotta work on the boat again? Like, oh, this is taking so long. Like, is this really gonna happen, Noah? In the middle of that, he had to still believe. That's where it gets hard. That's where it gets difficult. Maybe you're in a workplace to where it's hard to live for God because everyone maybe makes fun of you or kind of pokes a little bit of fun at you not participating in some of the things that they participate in. Maybe you're a student and you feel like you're an outcast. You feel like, man, everybody's going this direction. You feel that pressure. That takes strength of faith to not give up. Let Noah's faith encourage you for a moment. At least we're not building an ark in the middle of nowhere for 100 years. If he could do it, then surely we can do it. Stand for God in the middle of a challenging time to live for God. When our morals are challenged, when the existence of God is challenged, when Christianity is challenged, in the middle of that, having strong faith, that's where that comes in. So it's said like this, for Noah, in the middle of nowhere, he's building this boat. Everyone's laughing at him. You could say it like this, faith often looks foolish before it looks faithful. Noah looked foolish, no doubt, but afterwards, he looked faithful. Philip Yancey says it like this, faith means believing in advance what we will only make sense in reverse. Faith means believing in advance what will only make sense in reverse. In other words, the saying, hindsight's 20/20. What faith is having hindsight before then. Before you ever see it, say, no, I know for sure. I know, I've got the title. This is what God has told me to do. And that's really where you get your strength for faith. And that's what Noah had to do. You think about all those that had great faith, that had strong faith. You think about David, who took on Goliath, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to stand for God in the face of death, or Mary to trust God with a divine pregnancy, or for Jesus to trust the Father before the cross. What all of them had to do, including Noah, and what we have to do today, is basically this. How do you have strength of faith? Is you gotta go and you gotta trust God's word more than anyone else's word. In other words, you gotta trust God's promises, what God has called you to do, what God has asked you to do, what he's telling you to do, all of us to do in the word of God, more than the world says, more than the devil says, certainly, and more than even your own inner critic sometimes would wanna do. Say, I'm gonna trust God. In the middle of this challenge, in the middle of my financial issues, you know what I'm gonna not do? I'm not gonna look at all the numbers and just freak out and trust my, on the inside, my critic, and say, oh, you're a failure, you can't do this, it always happens to you. Instead, you believe God's word and say, no, God said he would provide for me. I'm gonna trust that word. Maybe for you, it's in your marriage. Instead of looking at your circumstances and saying, God, I'm gonna trust you that you'll never leave me or forsake me. I know you've got a plan and purpose. So God, I pray for your will, your peace, your will to be done. It's looking to him to trust him. Okay, so here's the difference. The 2 points that we covered, the length of faith and strength of faith. Length of faith is all about being consistent day in and day out. But strength of faith is all about believing, trusting, having faith in the face of great opposition. So that's the difference. Noah got up every morning and said, I'm gonna do this. That's length of faith. Every day, just getting up, God, I'm gonna be faithful to you. But then when it got challenging, it got hard, they started to see that the ark was being built. The neighbors started coming over, had questions, started laughing, making fun of him. That's when it got hard. That's when he had to have strength of faith. But here's the really cool part. Noah's length of faith intersected with his strength of faith, which is why he had such a great impact. He was able to do something so incredible because he brought those two things together, which is the last point here, which is the impact of his faith, the impact of his faith. Literally, you could say all of us in this room are beneficiaries of Noah's faith. I mean, ultimately, all credit goes back to God. It's God's goodness, his love, his faithfulness. But he used Noah's obedience and his faith. Think about it for just a second. What if Noah didn't build the ark? What if he didn't have faith? He didn't trust God. He didn't have that long faith. He didn't have strength of faith. He didn't do any of that. I mean, literally, we might not be here today. So everything that you have in your life that's good comes back, it's at least connected. I mean, we thank God for it, but it's at least connected to Noah's faith. It's kind of crazy to think about. Kind of crazy to think that any good thing you have in your life, if Noah didn't obey, might not exist. I mean, you think of the impact that Noah's faith had. And here's the reality. When you have long faith consistently every day, and you have strong faith, it not only impacts you, but those around you. People are watching your consistent faith. They look at you and say, man, year after year, they keep serving God. Just so consistent, so faithful. Man, she's so rock solid in her faith. And then they watch you go through something challenging. You fight cancer, you go through some kind of financial situation, you go through a major disappointment. They watch how you handle that, and they see your strength of faith through that. Man, that has a huge impact on those around you. Don't ever discount growing your faith is not just for you, it's for those that are around you, for your kids, for your spouse, for your neighbors, for your friends, for your church community, for your small group. It's for those around you. You're not just living for you. I'm not just living for me. When I cultivate my faith, I'm doing it for somebody else as well. I want to share at the end of the message here, I want to share a story of a guy by the name of Dr. Bill Bright. It's in the late 1940s. Bill Bright was a successful businessman in Los Angeles. Ambitious, charming, and driven. He was chasing the American dream. But his wife, Vanette, had recently given her life to Christ, and she began praying that Bill would experience the same transformation. One night, after a conversation with a Christian friend, Bill fell to his knees and surrendered his life completely to Jesus. Soon after, he prayed a dangerous prayer, one that would define his life. Lord, I want my life to count for eternity. That prayer didn't just change him, it changed millions. In 1951, Bill and Vanette started a ministry to reach college students with the gospel, Campus Crusade for Christ. Their first meeting had only a handful of students from UCLA, but Bill was convinced that if students met Christ, they could change the world. He said it this way. He said, reach the campus today, reach the world tomorrow. Over time, that faith-driven vision expanded beyond campuses to workplaces, military bases, and entire nations. Bill's deep conviction was that God would use ordinary people if they were fully surrendered to bring extraordinary change. Now listen to this part. For decades, Bill and Vanette prayed and worked tirelessly. There's long faith. They kept after it. There were seasons when finances were scarce, doors were closed, and fruit seemed invisible. But Bill kept believing. There's strong faith. That long, strong faith would bear incredible fruit. By the 1980s, Campus Crusade had spread to over 150 countries. Their discipleship materials, especially the 4 spiritual laws, were translated into more than 200 languages. Millions of people heard the gospel through their ministry film, Jesus, now the most watched film in history, translated into over 1,900 languages. When he passed away in 2003, he left behind not just an organization, but a movement, one that had reached hundreds of millions with the message of Christ. Man, his long faith and his strong faith came together to make a big impact. That's his story. We heard about Noah's story, but that could be your story too. That you could have just that consistent faith, the long faith, you can have the strong faith. And when you do that, you not only have an impact on your own life, but you get to have an impact on others. Would you all stand with me? Let's close our time in prayer here. And as we talk about this whole idea of faith, the cool thing about faith is no matter how much you've grown in it, you can always grow in it more. You can always have more faith, stronger faith. So no matter if you've been walking with Jesus for a week or you've been walking with him for a long time, I want to encourage you to reach out to God and just say, God, I want more faith. I want that. Maybe you need more of that long faith, that consistency, not letting emotions hijack where you are. Maybe you need some of that strong faith right now because you're going through a really difficult time. You need God to strengthen your faith. Wherever you might be, we'll just pray that God does that for our